Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a scene analysis for the show Arcane. This probably goes without saying, but if you have not yet finished Arcane or watched Arcane, this is going to contain spoilers, so you likely should go watch that show and then you can come back here. If you're that rare person that likes seeing spoilers before you get into something, then of course you're welcome to stay, but just wanted to give that heads up. The way I'm going to be structuring this is there is a specific scene that I'm going to refer to as Scene A that I want to examine, but to really appreciate Scene A, we also have to then bring in Scene B because the parallels are phenomenal. It's one of those things that I think on first watch, you don't quite realize how many little nods, how many little things that they did, but then watching it again, oh man, it made me even more emotional, and Scene A is already an emotional scene. So Scene A, the main scene we're going to be looking at is Victor running. I'm getting emotional just saying that. Oh my gosh, sorry. I gotta compose myself. This scene alone is one of the best scenes in the entire show. If you were to ask me a list, the top 5 scenes, absolutely this would be on there. This is incredible. It is so emotionally charged. It's such a quiet but triumphant moment. It has so much to it that you just find yourself, your heart is shattered and you just want so badly for something to go right with Victor. Scene B is when Victor is a boy. And when we're going to watch the scenes together so we can see these details. But the scene that I'm referring to is when he is young and you see him growing up in the Undercity. He's alone and you can see already that he is such a brilliant mind and he's working on this little toy boat that he then puts into the water and he follows it along. And when you see that scene and you see those parallels to Victor running, it makes it even harder to keep the waterworks from coming out. We're gonna watch Scene B first, and then we're gonna take a look at Scene A.
The music already.
I already had to wait a second before getting into the second clip because that scene alone, he's so sweet and he's so hopeful. He's just such a brilliant mind who deserves the best in the world. Anyway, we're gonna watch him as an adult, this scene that just, ugh, man. Okay, so we're gonna watch the second scene of Victor running, and then we're gonna discuss all of the parallels between these two scenes. So here we go.
Can you already tell what, if you didn't notice it before, it's so obvious now.
So many things to look at here. So first, the imagery with the boat. The second time I watched this, I was watching it through with my mom. And she's just watching it for the first time. She's trying to remember who's who and what's what. And this scene came up and I was like, the boats! And my mom didn't know what I was talking about. She was like, whatever. But I was like, oh my gosh. And then when I came home from visiting my mom, I went to show my husband, I still have my headphones in, so if I was kind of too loud just now, that's why. But anyway, when I came home, I was like, Sean, to my husband, I was like, we have to watch these scenes. You got to see these scenes back to back because I didn't notice this the first time and watching it again. So obviously, initially, Victor is creating this little, he's using his brilliant mind to get this little boat to work, and he's following it. And young Victor is so sweet. He has this look of being so pure and so hopeful, and he's just so joyous to see something he did, something he created working. And so you can see the brilliance of his mind, and I feel like it's represented so well in the boat. But it's like the boat has always been able to keep going. And so you see that through this physical representation of him trying to follow along with this boat and the boat getting ahead of him. And then when you look at him as an adult, and again, the Victor running scene is emotional all on its own, even without all of these extra details. But when you see him first put his foot down, in that scene, you see the boat right there. So it's like, okay, here we are. We're starting. We're together. And then as he's walking, at first the boats are ahead. And then as he's gaining momentum and as he's gaining confidence, when he starts to go, he goes ahead of them. And it's just, oh my gosh, I can't talk about this scene without getting emotional. That's why I really wanted to film this immediately after, because I was just so excited to talk about it and just show my appreciation and love for this show and how brilliant it is. But at the same time, I have such a hard time even referencing this scene without getting emotional. But the other little detail, when you don't really see him talking, you don't really hear him say anything. But when he's a boy, there's that cry when he falls versus when he's an adult, and that yell. And the parallels even with that triumph, that just he did it, that sense of accomplishment and being amazed, it's just so exceptionally well done. But there is a sense of foreboding in both of these scenes. So initially, when he's a boy, I let it play on because where you see the boat stop, I feel like that is kind of representing, and maybe this is me just looking into it a little bit too much, the parallels with the boats in both scenes I think is very intentional. This other one is me reading into things maybe, or maybe there is something to this and this was very intentional as well. Where the boat stops, I think is in some ways representing that we can only go so far. I was talking about how I think the boat is representing his mind, what he's capable of creating. I also want to highlight, just kind of side tangent for a second. One, the boat is of course small. You could argue it's small in the same way that Victor is small then, and then you have the big boat when he's an adult. But also it shows how far they have come, how far Piltover has come in their technology and everything that he has contributed to in the advancements of his society through his amazing work and his mind. You see that, look at how much more there is of everything now. This great thing that you're able to do it on a much grander scale. So there's that. But then also the placement of the boat, and this is where the more ominous factor comes in. The boat does at some point stop. And I think a big discussion in the show between the characters, this isn't something to read into, is this: how far do we let science go? How far do we let advancements in technology go? At what point do we go too far? At what point does it become dangerous? And initially, when you're seeing him as a boy, I feel like the answer is very obvious when you see where the boat ends up. The boat stops and then Victor keeps going. So he ends up kind of going into that territory of, we're going too far. We need to stop at some point. But then he's exploring what comes next. And I think that parallels really well with what happens directly after the Victor running scene, which is Sky's death, which is devastating. And so directly right after he had this amazing triumphant moment, he has this devastating moment. And you also see Sky is there when he's a boy. You hear somebody call Sky and then she runs off. It's right before the scene starts. You see she's always been around and now she's gone. And there's that sense of how far do we let things go? So I think that's another aspect, and that's one that is definitely more artistic interpretation. So I'm curious your thoughts on all of that. Getting back to what I think is the more intentional aspects of it, I want to highlight the music. The music in this, you have that, it has this sense of momentum as as Victor is going and as he's following the boat as a boy, there's this sense of movement that's pushing forward in the music, and then it builds and then it kind of just plateaus. Whereas when he's older, it's building and then it keeps going. It is very well acknowledged and known that music plays a big role in how we perceive a scene, and on top of that, the emotions that are evoked. Arcane, one of the biggest things, how amazing the music accompanies everything that's happening. The music is phenomenal in the show, and in this particular moment, in both of these scenes, it's a much more subtle but beautiful way of representing how music can really attach to a scene so well. So like I said, as a boy, that beautiful violin music is playing, and it has that sense of pureness the same way he does, but then that plateau, it's not harsh, it's just here is what happens. Here is just how things are. Then, of course, as an adult, we push on, and then it pushes on into the next scene, and the way he kind of immediately has his tools and he's ready to keep going. That music is pushing, pushing, pushing. So the music in this moment is exceptional. There's just so much about these two scenes individually that are amazing, but when you see them back to back, when you watch them together, they are, I think, highlighting why Arcane deserves all of the love, why it deserves all of the praise, and why it is such an amazing show. Let me know what are some additional details that you noticed that I didn't mention, or just certain things I did mention that you want to expand on. And then also let me know if you'd like me to do this style of video in the future. I would absolutely love to. The more getting to watch Arcane that I get to do, the better. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.